Welcome to today's podcast, Healing Through Love, with Dr. Matt Singer, a holistic medicine specialist with an expertise in energy work, homeopathy, and works with people all around the world to help them remove emotions trapped in the body. And co-host Holly Celiano, a mother, intuitive healer, and well-known to international audiences as a resource for truth seekers on a variety of global concerns that are currently impacting humanity. Today's focus, mirroring. Our beliefs reflect back and become our reality. With special guest, Dr. Micheal Hartpence.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Healing with Love. I'm Holly Celiano, and I'm here with Dr. Matthew Singer. And today we're talking on mirroring and how the universe reflects back what we put out there. And we have a special guest on today. So, Matt, why don't you introduce your special guest today?
Yeah, well, thank you, Holly. So it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm honored to have one of my greatest mentors in my life with us today, Dr. Micheal Hartpence, and he is he's a doctor in Atlanta. He runs multiple successful practices for over 40 years. He's helped thousands of doctors achieve their goals. He's an entrepreneur. He is a father of 3 children. He's been around the world many times. He's spoken around the world, and he is the example of understanding the laws of the universe and using that to create everything in his life that he's ever desired. So, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Oh, my pleasure, and thanks for that great introduction. Hopefully I'll live up to it.
I don't think you have any problem with that. So I wanted to start out right away by getting into really the nuts and bolts of this. So one of the laws, I remember when I first met you, we were in Dominican Republic, and I was walking past you and didn't know who you were, and you were laying in a lounge chair, and I had asked you a question, and you had given me an answer, and I said, that's unbelievable. And you said, well, that's why you're not doing it. And right when you said that to me, everything changed, because I realized that my idea of something was that I wanted it, but I didn't believe I could have it. So to that extent, it led to me understanding that reality does not support us in any which way, and it's not capable of supporting us. We support our reality, and reality reflects it back to us, our beliefs. So could you give us some of your understanding and wealth of knowledge of how you've used that for success in your life?
Sure. Well, the most important thing for everyone to understand is that it's your belief system that does control your reality. And we can have positive beliefs, negative beliefs, whatever. So if we have positive beliefs, most things happen in our lives will be positive. We have negative beliefs, we'll attract those negative things. And your belief system is what really dictates who you are, whether you're in alignment with the universe, whether you're not in alignment with the universe, whether you're able to manifest things, whether you're able to express even gratitude. And gratitude is probably the primary thing to understand in making your beliefs come to a reality, is being able to express that gratitude for what you already have that puts you in a state of abundance. So you have to have the proper beliefs. You have to believe without a question of a doubt in what you are. Just I always say the example is, do you believe that the sun's going to rise tomorrow morning? Yes. Do you even think about it? Not really. You just know without doubt that the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning. And that's the type of firm belief you have to have in what you're trying to accomplish. And your beliefs is no doubt that you're going to achieve those beliefs. And the most important way to achieve those beliefs is putting yourself into a state of abundance with expressing gratitude for what you have, which is a very abundant in our lives, which most people don't even realize that we are so abundant in our lives. We focus on those little bitty negative things, those lacks, those wants that we don't have, and we forget about the wonderful abundance we do have. So when you put yourself back in that state of abundance and appreciate what you already have, you start manifesting all kinds of things continually coming to you.
So, Micheal, if I may ask you, because Matt has told me you have achieved a level of success that a lot of people would love to achieve. Can you break down how you went about being in that state of abundance? Because a lot of people listening have lack mentality. They're not in a state of abundance. And when you talk, be in that state of abundance, that's foreign to the majority of people. So can you break down the steps and how you went about achieving the level of success that you have?
But one of the first things that you have to overcome are your fears. So many people have all these fears and doubts within themselves, and that limits them from becoming abundant. So the first thing to do is have a lot of self-awareness. What are your fears? What are those things that are stopping you from becoming abundant? So you have to really do some introspective thinking. Okay, what is it? It can be things from the past. It can be things from your childhood. It can be things that happened early in your life. It can be any number of things that happen to you, a failure in a business, a failure at school, a divorce, a tragic event that happens, and then you get stuck and you're afraid to take a step, and it kind of manifests itself into fears in all aspects of your life. So the first thing is to educate yourself on your fears, and then try and take steps to correct and overcome those fears. And you may need help and guidance in overcoming those fears, but that's the main stumbling block into people getting to an abundance, is they have these fears that they typically carry around their entire lives that dictate who they are. So we have to address those fears first and foremost to get people to understand that getting into that state of abundance is overcoming the fears that we usually artificially put on ourselves, because they're not really have a basis in reality. They're just, most of them are unfounded, or they're just points of reference in our past life that we now have allowed to dictate our present life. So if we go back and say, okay, this happened to me at this point in my life, it really doesn't affect me now, but mentally, I'm allowing it to affect me at this point. So let me identify that. It may have been a divorce, or it may have been some other tragic event that happened to you, but it's really only a point of reference in your life that happened to you. It's not who you are. It just happened to you at that time. So if we take those things and use them as kind of a stepping stone to grow and develop and become better within ourselves and how we think about ourselves, we can overcome those past fears and negative thoughts to kind of control most people's thinking, because most people default to the negative all the time. They always think about the negative. There may be only 1 or 2% negative in their life, but they always focus on the negative and not the 95+% that's positive that happens every single day. So we have to shift that mindset to get into focusing on the positive, which then leads into abundance, because you're thinking about, look at all this great stuff around me. Oh yeah, that little thing happened over there, but that's just one small thing in the entirety of my day, my week, my month, my life. So getting rid of those negative thoughts and emotions is primarily the first step to getting into the abundant state.
Mm-hmm. So when you're in that state of abundance, you can't be in the state of fear or lack, right?
Right. You can't be thinking about two things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I always say that one of the most important things is expressing gratitude all the time, because as soon as you start expressing gratitude for the things you have, you create abundance within yourself, and that's a reflection to the world that you're in a state of abundance. And then you start attracting more and more things because you're grateful for what you already have. And like I say, we live in a very abundant world. The universe is very abundant. It will give us everything we need. And most people are more abundant than they think. They just focus on the negative instead of what they have.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I believe most people focus on abundance strictly. They equate it to financial abundance. And they're missing the big point. You're abundant just by waking up in the morning and being alive. You're
Absolutely
abundant
correct.
by able to walk and talk and eat. And there's so many things to just be grateful for each new day. But most people do think of abundance as monetary.
Exactly right. And if they live in a state of abundance and all those other things in their lives that you mentioned, usually the monetary materialistic things will then follow, because it creates a pattern of abundance in all things in your life. But most people don't do that. They just focus, okay, I don't have a nice house, I don't have a nice car, I don't have enough money, And instead of saying, I have a wonderful life, I have wonderful children, I have a wonderful family, my health is good, all those things are great. They're focusing on the lack that they have instead of the abundance that all of us do have.
So, Mike, getting to that point where somebody does say, I don't live in a house I like, or I don't drive a car I like, they had to have obviously been invoking some kind of lack or belief that they can't have that in order to put themselves in that situation. It doesn't just happen like that. We have to create that circumstance, correct?
Right. We have to create it, but typically it comes from some event in our past life that tells us that we're not good enough. We can't. There's always naysayers and people saying you can't do this. The mother, brother, teacher, preacher concept that somebody has tried to hold you back, because quite frankly, a lot of people are negative and try and do hold others back. So you have to be able to identify those things and overcome them and realize that you are worthy of a beautiful car and a beautiful house and a wonderful life and things like that. And when you start believing that in yourself, all of a sudden, slowly but surely, it does. I'm sorry, slowly but surely, it does start to happen for you. So, but you have to start with the belief in yourself that you're worthy and that you should have all those things.
Mm-hmm. Great. So to that point, then, when I've asked you in the past, I've asked you questions like, if I got myself into a state of fear, and I would call you up, and I would and you would talk me off the ledge. Essentially, what you were doing is you were just getting me to change my state of being.
Correct.
Because
wanted you to change your thought process and turn it into looking at the positive things. Instead of you thinking about what you don't have or what you might not have, and a lot of times it had no basis in reality. It was just your preconceived notion of what your reality was that was a negative. Instead of saying, you know what, whether it's paying lots of money in taxes or whatever the case may be, that's just that state of mind that you put yourself in. Although the money might have been there, it created a negative emotion that then turned itself into negativity. Well, am I going to have enough money for this? Am I going to have enough money for that? It always was putting you in a state of lack. But if you're in a state of gratitude, you can't be in a state of lack at the same time. So if you owe a big bill and you say, I'm grateful I have the money to pay the bill, I'm happy with that, let's move on. Instead of, oh my God, I've got this big bill, I really don't want to pay this bill, I'm not going to have as much money. The universe will always replenish if you give with in abundance and gratitude.
So let's talk about that for mirroring, because everything in our life is mirrored back to us from the state of being that we are in. So people are in a state of lack, they're going to mirror that and have lack reflected in their life. If they're in a state of fear, that's what's going to be mirrored and coming back to them. If you're in a state of gratitude, then you're going to see everything around you from that state of gratitude, where you're just in constant blessing and joy. And then it multiplies. Everything you focus on multiplies.
That's 100% correct. And, the universe just gives us a reflection of who we are. If we are in that state of abundance and have positive beliefs and things like that, the universe will continually give us those things. But if we're in a state of lack or in negative emotions, the universe will mirror that as well. So our lives are just a reflection of what we put out in the universe. So when we put those positive emotions out into the universe, typically that energetic resonance that's created will be given back by the universe, because we're all just energy beings. So when we put out negative energy comes back. Put out positive energy comes. It's just like your interactions with people. If you're interacting with them and you're putting out all this negative energy, what do? They start to repel. They start to go away. They start to move away from you because you're putting out this negative energy. When you put out positive energy, you attract people. So the same thing happens with everything in the universe. When you put out the negativity, your universe repels you and what you want. When you put out positive energy, you put yourself in that state of attraction. Everybody talks about they want to be in that state of attraction of abundance in the universe. And the way to do it is to put out that positive energy all the time. And it's a process you have to overcome, because a lot of people, like I said, live in the negative. They always think about the negative. It's always the negative. They're not thinking of all the positive things that happen every single day in every person's life. Just like when you talked about just getting up and being able to walk. Exactly right. We're grateful to get up and walk in the morning. People don't think of that as a positive. They don't even think of it at all, as a matter of fact. And that's why they're missing the boat on all the abundance that's in their life all the time.
So, go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Holly.
I was just going to say, I think what would be key for people to retrain themselves into that abundance is do a gratitude journal every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Write down what you're grateful for at the end of the day. You could even write down when you wake up in the morning what you're grateful for.
Right. And I think you'll find that if people would do things like that, and write down all the good things in their life, they would see that they're, it's like the pros and cons list. They would have all these pros and only one or two cons, and they would see that their life has many more positives than negatives, but they never think about that. So I agree with you 100%. That would be a good way for people to start to move in the right direction, so they can see it in black and white.
Okay, Mike, so let me ask you this. Let's get to this topic now. So you told me incredible stories about your life. When you were young, you told me that story about when you were about 8 or 11 years old, and your parents didn't necessarily raise you with these belief systems, and you had ordered something in the mail, and you just had a belief system at 11 years old that the money would show up, and your parents didn't grow up with that belief system, nor did my parents. So at a young age, you had just told me that you had something inside of you that just had this belief system, that just abundance was there. So what would you, what suggestions or tips would you have for the listeners who say, I just feel like I'm stuck in this. I was raised in this negative life that I can't do this, or I have to marry this type of person, or I have to work in this job, or I'm stuck. There's nothing I can do about it. I have to do this. What would you say to them?
I would say that that's a false belief on their part, and they need to understand that that's not really their reality. They're allowing someone else's reality dictate what they do in their lives. No matter whether it's your parents or somebody else saying something to you, or growing up in an environment that has a poverty concept, if you allow that to continue and fester, you will continue to be in that poverty concept as well. So you have to have an understanding that that's them, that's not you. So you can change and break away from those chains at any time. And I've told you the stories about, my parents were very poor, and we lived in my grandparents' garage behind their house, about 500 square feet, with just, basic partitions, and we all slept on mattresses and things like that. And I told you the story, when I was 11 years old, I wanted these toys, and they were $13.50, and I just ordered them online. And when they showed up, my parents were appalled, because my father never made more than $100 a week in his life. So $13 was a lot of money. So, but what they didn't know, the day before, I had gotten some belated birthday money from other family members, and I had $14 in cash to pay the COD delivery man when he showed up. And the look on my parents' faces was just in astonishment, is, where'd you get that money from? I said, they said, you ordered it without having the money? I said, I just knew I would get it from somewhere, and I did. And that's the other thing, is we can't always question where we get things. Everybody says, I want to manifest this thing. There's one story I tell about, he was a doctor who needed $10,000, and he was wondering where he was going to get it from. And a family member offered him a gift of $10,000, and he was turning it down. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, that's not where I want to get the money from. So I said, now you're deciding for the universe where you're going to get the money from. You asked it for $10,000. You didn't put any parameters on where that $10,000 was going to come from. But you're now saying, because your family member is offering you $10,000, which is exactly what you asked the universe for, you don't like the package that it came in, so you're going to turn it down and still be in that state of lack, because you don't have your $10,000 where you thought it was going to come from. So we have to also understand the universe will give us things, but it's not necessarily in the package that we might expect unless you can define those packages to the universe. You want to get it from here, you want to get it from there. May or may not always get it from you, but if you have belief that you're going to get it, most of the time the universe is going to give it to you. But you have to have 100% belief in your ability to obtain that.
Mm-hmm.
So in listening to you, the key component is beyond a shadow of a doubt. You just know somehow, some way, what you know and desire to manifest in your life will just show up. You don't need to put any doubt, and I think the doubt kind of counteracts whatever it is you're wanting to manifest in your life. Just beyond a shadow of a doubt, just know it's going to happen.
Right. Like I said, 1% doubt and you're out. You can't have even 1% doubt. You just have to have 100% total belief, and nobody, what they say, what they do, can dissuade you and turn away from your belief that you have 100% belief in yourself, what you're going to achieve, what you're going to attract, because nobody else has anything to do with it. It's all coming from you. So that's that's the mistake that most people make, is they tell their wants, dreams, and desires to other people, and then those people poo-poo them, and then they start to have this negative thing. Well, maybe I can't get it because that person said I could, and that person's maybe a position of authority, like a mother, father, teacher, preacher, whatever. But really, that person has no bearing on your ability to attract whatever you want in your life unless you allow them to do that by accepting their negative thoughts into your belief system.
Mm-hmm. So, Mike, and this brings me back to another point. Remember, you had told me this is one of the stories that stuck with me that made a huge impact in my life. When you were telling me back in probably the 80s, when you were at a seminar, and one of the doctors said, you can take your practice from where it is now to any height you want to bring it to, any depth you want to bring it to, any level of success you want to bring it to. And there was something inside of you that just said, yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. And you had told me in a matter of 2 weeks, you had quadrupled your practice.
No, that's correct. And it was just like an epiphany that came to me when he made that statement. I knew without doubt that he was 100% correct, that it could come, you could do it just like that if you really believed it. And from that moment on, I believed it. And within 2 weeks, my practice tripled without me changing anything except my belief system, that I believed that it was going to grow and develop. Now, I was doing all these things prior to that, but I didn't have the belief that I could do it that quickly. And then we also look at these time parameters that people place on things that happens quickly. Whatever time it takes, it's such a small microcosm of the time in the universe. We think something takes a long time, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. But in the big scheme of things of our entire career and our entire life, those are very small capsules of time that we went through to create these things. So you can't get frustrated if it doesn't happen in 1 day or 2 days. You have to keep that belief that you know it's going to happen. And then you wake up one day and there it is. It happened to you. But you never waver from that belief that it will happen.
So, and the way you described it was exactly that. One of the principles of the universe is that proves that reality is supported by our beliefs. So when you had that strong belief that that's just how it is, that my practice will quadruple, reality supported that, and that became your reality, and that's how it was.
Right. Our beliefs are our reality, and that's what people have to understand. What you believe is who you are and what you create in your life. That's what it is, and we have to have no doubt at all. Like, if you're a very religious person and believe in God, you have no doubt. Mm-hmm. And you have no doubt whether you think you're going to heaven or some other afterlife that you're going to achieve. A lot of those people have zero doubt that that's what's going to happen, and that's who they are, and that's perfectly fine, and that's great, and that's wonderful. But we have to have that type of belief in all aspects of our life. If we believe that firmly, like that, in all aspects of our life, it'd be amazing the abundance that people could draw to themselves. Like I've told you before that I don't see patients anymore, but in the days that I did, and I showed up, I would just expect people to be there. And sure enough, even if I wasn't on a schedule, if I showed up, people would be calling, walking in, doing things, and the office would be crazy. And my staff would say, how did they know you were here? I said, the universe knew I was going to come here. And they supplied me with all the abundance I needed and all the people I needed to see today.
Mm-hmm.
So, Michael, when your practice doubled in 2 weeks or tripled in 2 weeks, did you do anything differently? Or it was just your belief system strictly that changed?
I did nothing differently than believe, totally different than I had before. I believed before that it had to be a long process of struggle to build your practice and things like that, because that's what I was told. And then when this speaker said, no, that's not the way it is, it can happen instantaneously if you believe it. And I did believe it. And that's a change. From a procedural standpoint, a technical standpoint, I changed nothing. All I changed was inside my head.
That's unbelievable. Well, that goes with anything in our lives. Anything we want to create, if we just instantaneously believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that it will come to us, it will.
It will. And it's not to say that nobody ever has any negative thoughts or anything like that, because we all do. It's kind of human nature. But the key is to have the self-awareness to understand that, hey, that's a negative thought. I'm going to throw that away. I'm going to move away from that. I'm going to express gratitude. I'm going to get back into abundance. And then you move away very quickly. And sometimes that's instantaneous. You know, you can have that negative thought and then instantaneously say, nope, that's not who I am. That's not what I believe, and move on. Most people get that negative thought and it starts to fester and grow and grow. And next thing you know, everything's negative again. And oh, the sky is falling. And oh my God, what am I going to do next? And everything like that. And it started from one small seed of a negative thought that they allowed to fester and grow. And they actually watered it by feeding into it and gave it plant food to grow. And next thing you know, they're in this big negative cloud walking around over their head, thinking, oh my God, the sky's going to fall on my head and it's the end of the world. And it's not. It's just, you just allowed it to be there by your thoughts and your beliefs.
Amazing. Okay, so Mike, so now let's get to a situation where somebody is trying to break a belief system, right? And then they keep falling back. And I remember, you know, when I was going through this process, and I would call you up, and I'd say, oh man, I'm so frustrated. I thought I was doing so good. And you said you are doing good. It's a matter of reaction time. So I would go from it taking me 6 months to get over something to 4 months to 2 months to 2 days to 2 weeks to 2 seconds. And you said, it's not that you said to me, it's not like I don't get thrown off. I just recover so much faster.
Correct.
So what was your steps in mastery for recognizing that you're in a place of negative thinking or fear and then turning it around?
You have to really start to do some self-introspective thinking. And when you start to see that these things are negative, you need to start walking yourself backwards. Okay, what was the trigger that put me in this state? And just, you know, this may be 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road, 2 weeks down the road. You say, okay, something happened to me at this point that threw me off course. Let me go back and see if I can figure out what that was. Was it a negative thought? Was it a fear? What was it that triggered me to go into this state that's created this snowball of my whole life just seems like it's unraveling? When in reality, it's not. You just allowed one little thing to throw you off course. So the steps are really just to go backwards in introspective thinking to what was the event that caused that? Because it's always an event or a negative thing that happens in someone's life that triggers these things. So when you go back, you identify that and say, okay, this is the event. If this comes up again, I'm going to understand it. That's just a point of reference. I'm not going to let it affect me, and I'm just going to move on and express gratitude immediately. When people start to express gratitude for what they have immediately after they have some negative event, it minimizes that negative event 1,000-fold. It's like it's not even there because they have so much more that they're grateful for and they're abundant in. But we allow these little bitty negative thoughts or fears to just grow and multiply. And next thing you know, it's encompassing our whole life. So you have to do that introspective thinking, go back and identify what was the triggering event that put you in that negative state.
Mm-hmm.
It's really living in complete awareness that we are co-creators in our life, that everything is happening not to us because that's victimhood, but it's happening for us. And shifting that perspective changes everything. And we are the masters of our lives. We are our co-creators because it's our thoughts, our beliefs that we mull on all day long that reflect in the outer world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's so true. So let's get to this next topic. So and I know that this is something which I can tell you that I've experienced many times in my life, and I still work on it. So let's say our ego says, I'm significant or I'm worthy of being loved if I achieve this parameter. Whether if it's an athlete, I run this time, or if I'm an entrepreneur, I buy this amount of houses, or I sell this amount of stock, or I do this or that, or I make this amount of money, or I see this amount of patients, or this or that. So when our ego says, well, I'm not worthy enough until I've achieved this, I know you have developed a level of thinking of mastery that is so amazing. Tell us your wisdom on that.
Well, again, that goes back to having gratitude for what we already have. And the gratitude for what we already have takes us out of that lack, because when you're saying things like that, you're saying that there's a lack somewhere, that you haven't achieved a certain amount, done something at some goal that you set that you haven't achieved yet, but you may be very close to that or go on your way to do that, but because you're thinking about the lack aspect of it, which you do not have, you're not appreciating the things that you do have on the journey to get to whatever your final destination wants to be. And a lot of times we put these artificial ceilings on what we want to have in abundance. That's your artificial ceiling, whatever it is, because the universe has no ceiling on what it can give you in abundance. We put our own ceilings on it. And that's where a lot of people fall down, is that they have this artificial ceiling that they've placed upon themselves. And they always seem to get just under it, because they don't feel like they're worthy of getting to that artificial ceiling. But if they would just remove that and just be in a state of abundance and gratitude, usually when people do that, you blow by whatever artificial goals you set for yourself, because the universe, you're congruent with the universe, and it's giving you all the abundance that it has.
Amazing.
Big takeaway I'm gleaming from this conversation is we can have things happen instantaneously. It does not have to be this long, drawn out, just because you're in a doctor with a practice, it doesn't have to be years to have a level of having your practice double or triple. It can happen, like you said, in 2 weeks, just because our belief system says it can be so. It can be so.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. And I've worked with many doctors through the years who practice in the same town, practice on the same street, went to the same school, use the same technique, and one doctor people were busting his door down, and the other guy is twiddling his thumbs because he doesn't have anybody to come see him. And it's nothing but their belief system, because the doctor who's living in abundance is busting out the seams, and the one who's living that state of lack has nobody coming through his doors. So it's not anything. It's not about the school, your education, your location. It's all about your belief system.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know John DeMartini gave a really good presentation at one of the Parker seminars a long time ago with that exact example, where there was a doctor like that who for 10 years was struggling. And he went to the seminar, and DeMartini said, go into your office and be grateful for every patient you've ever seen, and look around your office and be grateful for everything in your office. And he said, this doctor said he had never seen more than 9 people a day. After he did that, the next day, not like a month later, the next day, he saw 52 people. Mm-hmm. He went from 9 to 52 by changing his belief system.
And that's all it takes, is just changing your belief system. When you have that strong belief system, you can create a lot of things. And you, like you said, you have to have no doubt that that's who you are. Like I told you the story before, there was a old doctor, Dr. Larry Webster, he practiced in Missouri for a long time, and he was teaching at Life University, and he decided to go back into practice again, and he was in pediatrics. And so he called me up on a Wednesday and said, I decided to leave the school. I want to come down and practice in your office with you. I said, okay, doc, when do you want to start? He said, tomorrow. I said, tomorrow? He said, yes. I said, well, come on down. The next day, he had 80 people. He saw 80 people in one day. He didn't advertise. He didn't do anything other than say, I'm starting tomorrow and people will show up. And 80 children, which for my ears was a bit much in one day to hear 80 kids running through our office all of a sudden. But he just had total belief that when he showed up, people would show up to see him.
That just goes to show how incredibly strong our belief systems are. It creates our reality. It creates everything. It mirrors back. It hears you. It's in communion with you. It works in harmony with you. It co-creates with you. So whatever we're saying, doing, thinking, feeling is tangible in the universe. It is so palatable, and people need to live in a state of awareness how powerful their thoughts, words, deeds, and belief systems are, because that's what you're creating. If your life is not working the way you want, check your belief systems. Where are you in lack consciousness? Where do you have doubt? If something bad happened to you, and this was a key thing that you said, your recovery time from that experience, how quickly can you pivot and not mull and dwell on it and just agonize over what happened? Those are key things.
Yes, they're very important. They're paramount, as a matter of fact. And how many times you hear people say, I've had a bad day? Well, they probably didn't have a bad day. They may have had a bad moment. Somebody may have said something to them, and then they let that fester into that bad day, bad week. But when you talk to them and you say, okay, why are you having that bad day? Well, such and such said something to me, and they didn't like my dress, or they didn't like my hair, they didn't like my haircut, they didn't like my work, or whatever it was. But that's all it was. It was that one instant that they allowed that to determine that they were going to have a bad day. And that bad day typically turns into a bad week and a bad month. And next thing you know, they're spewing this negativity that, woe is me, I'm the victim all the time. When they're creating their own victimhood by doing that.
Yeah. Now, let's go into the topic of relationships, because the same level of belief works for relationships. So let's say somebody's in a relationship and they are, I'll give you you don't mind if I use your example as well, because once again, in your life, it was an example that was just so amazing. But if somebody's in a relationship where they're not happy, the whatever happens, they feel trapped, stuck. Their spouse is not the same person anymore, different level of thinking. The spouse is making them feel stressed. They feel like they have to live up to their spouse's expectations, and it's just unrealistic. So they're living in a relationship that is so stressful. Now, applying the same laws we're talking about, give us your words of wisdom.
Well, the first thing in a relationship, if you are feeling those things, the first thing I always recommend is act like you want the relationship to be. If your partner is being negative, don't take that internally and make it part of you. Express positives and keep trying to move it in that direction. So now, it doesn't happen overnight. It may take years to try and get a partner to get out of that, or you may never be able to get out of that, because that's them. That's who they are. They have to be willing to accept and embrace a belief system that's positive. And some people are not, because of the things that happen to them in their life, whatever the events were, or they just don't have the self-awareness. And some people, quite frankly, don't want the self-awareness. And like you said, in my life, I've had, I was, first time I was married, that we just couldn't see things on the same level. She had much more negative emotions, and it was because of her upbringing and the things that her parents said and did to her. And we would work and talk about it, and she went to seminars, but she could never really release herself from those negative emotions. And we just eventually decided just to split ways, and it was amicable. And I told you I gave her 75% of our assets because I wanted her to have a good life and do the best that she could with herself and things like that, because I knew that the universe would replenish me with anything that I gave her. It would give me back tenfold, and it has. I have more now than I ever had during that marriage. So it's just because I believed that I would get it back, and it didn't matter. I could have given her 100%. It wouldn't matter. I would have gotten it all back. So, and then some, and that's what's happened to me in my life, in many more aspects than just financially.
Mm-hmm.
So relationships is a big key for people. All of life is relationships, whether it's friendships, partnerships, business, romantic relationships. And what would be the key belief system on those relationships to have them grow, foster, and become abundant?
Well, the first thing, if you have the right belief system, you will start attracting like-minded people into your life. So with those like-minded people, what can then happen is things will grow exponentially in your life. But you also have to, because we're always going to be presented with negative people in our life, whether it's a friend, romantic partner, business associate. It really behooves you just to walk away from that. Just say, okay, this does not suit who I am, so I'm not going to get involved in that. So, but most people don't want to do that. They think they have to force every relationship, good, bad, or indifferent, and that just brings them down. So I always say, keep your proper belief system, and you'll find that it will start to slowly but surely bring like-minded people into your life that you can have a friendship with, a business association with, or a romantic association with, and then you find the right person. But a lot of times you talk to people and they're kind of negative, and you kind of overlook that, and you say, oh well, he's handsome or she's beautiful, so I'm going to overlook those negative things. You're just setting yourself up for failure because you're not identifying that they're not like-minded with you. So you have to find those like-minded people and then cultivate that positive mindset with both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Most people in relationships compromise themselves, and they don't stay true to their core values and belief system because they so desperately want that relationship to work.
Right.
And they do compromise.
Right. They have a fear of loss, which means they fear that nobody will love them. So they're willing to compromise themselves for some portion of love that typically isn't complete love anyway. So, but it's out of the fear that they're not going to have someone in their life, whether it's a friend or it's a fear they need a business partner or, again, a romantic relationship. People fear of the loss of that, even though that they can, if they step back and see, they can say, yeah, all the red flags were there, but I ignored every single one of them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think the greatest gift anybody can do for themselves is to be okay with being alone. Mm-hmm. And if you're not in a relationship, get really clear being okay by yourself. And there's nothing wrong with being alone, and you're not lonely. When you're so centered with who you are as a person, then every relationship that shows up then becomes on that same level that you're at, because you don't come from a needy place in a relationship to fill a void in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, Holly, that's exactly what you're saying, that becomes the mirror, right? When we see it in ourselves, then we'll meet that person who matches who we are.
Yes.
And you have to be uncompromising in your beliefs and not allow those people who that and you can see that they're not the right person, but for your fear of being alone, you would walk away from them. So you don't walk away from them. Like in my own life, I spent 5 years single, on my own, no TV, just read books and was with myself. And then the right person finally showed up. And it was kind of funny. I tell the story that we were sitting on the couch one day and she turned to me as only a woman can and said, "What is it you don't like about me?" And I said, "Oh, this might be a loaded question here." So I sat back and I thought, I said, "You know what? Not one thing. There's not one thing I don't like about you. I think we're perfectly in harmony with one another. We think the same way. We believe in the same things. There's not one thing I can think of that I don't like about you." So that's the day I decided to marry her.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Mike, this is amazing. So this is like drinking water out of a fire hose. So the amount of information you gave us was amazing. Holly, do you have any last takeaways from this?
So for everybody listening, just to kind of have a step-by-step guide on how to create the abundance in your life, you have to get really clear on your life and do a self-analysis of where your beliefs are not in alignment with what it is you want to create. And then go write a gratitude journal. Be grateful for every single thing in your life. The smallest thing, just even having a bed. Some people don't even have a bed to sleep in. Running water, food, being able to walk. Some people can't even walk. I mean, those are just miracles every day, and relish those. And then once you're clear on that and you start building that muscle, then you can start putting out there exactly what it is you want to create without a shadow of a doubt. And don't put a time frame. It doesn't have to be hard. It can be easy. You can have the life you want with ease and grace, instantaneous, as soon as you shift your thoughts and your belief system to match that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key. And if something bad happens, don't hang in that energy for long. Matt, I had gone through something and I was grinding on that for a while, but I shifted pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And it changed my life, shifting that quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, do you have any last takeaways for us?
Yeah, I would say that the number one thing for everyone is just plain and simple gratitude. When you're in a state of gratitude, it's hard to be negative. I mean, it's impossible. And if people would just stay in that state of gratitude, and when they feel themselves drifting from that, immediately check themselves and get back. That's where that self-awareness comes from. You start to say, "Oh, I'm not grateful anymore. Let me see what I'm grateful for today. What's happening in my life today that I'm grateful for." And next thing you know, the negativity goes away. So it all starts with gratitude. And then you put in your belief system and your manifestation. All those things come from gratitude.
How about you, Matt? What's your takeaway?
So my biggest takeaway is really one, knowing that reality does not support us. We are supporting our reality with our thoughts and our beliefs. And being so hyper-focused on my thoughts and beliefs brings me awareness. So I have the ability to know where I am at all times. If I'm in a place of abundance and gratitude, what am I going to do to stay there? Because the universe will keep reflecting that back to me. And the second that something shifts, being able to recognize it and then understand the reason why I brought it into my life, and then be able to get back into a state of gratitude. So I think that is so powerful in knowing that we really are the creators. So, I mean, this was amazing. Mike, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And Holly, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, both of you. This was awesome. This is just powerful stuff. It should be taught to kids early on so that they learn this and then start creating the lives that they want without all the struggle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful
day. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining Healing Through Love, and please stay tuned for future shows. and join us as we spread the power of love.